Hey guys, it's Bex. Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the 16 books that I read in April and June. I forgot to do this before starting to film, so I will just put on the screen the kind of stats, the genres that I read, my average rating for each month, all that kind of good stuff for you guys, in case you are interested in that. Oh no! Okay, the first book that I finished in April is this huge book. And I've been dying to talk about this book, but I haven't because I didn't read it in a video. I absolutely loved this book. The Will of the Day by James Islington. This is the first book in what is going to be a series. I rated this book 5 stars. This book follows this boy, Vis, who has basically been taken in by this prestigious family to go to this academy, kind of undercover, to find out answers. This academy is very elite. It's hard to get into, let alone move up the ranks. And because of his kind of secret quest that he's on, he actually needs to move up the ranks and quickly for his own good and safety, kind of. That is really hard, but luckily he is very, very smart. And the fantastical element in this book is this thing called will, which is hard to explain, kind of, but basically it's a form of magic where you have this hierarchy of will, and I think it even has a picture of it in the very beginning. Yeah, so you have 8 different rankings, and the higher rank you are, the more will that you receive from the lower ranked people. And if you are lower ranked in the same vein, the more will that you have to give up to the higher ranked people. And the more will you have basically just makes you more powerful, stronger, faster. That's kind of the gist. I just want to say, not related to the actual quality of this book or anything, but literally look at this. The text is so small. This book is really long in page count. I can't remember. Let me look. 620 pages, which is long, definitely. But this is more like an 800-page book in terms of word count. So just keep that in mind. It is extremely long, which is fine. Again, I don't care. I loved this book. And I think one of the ways that can kind of express how much I love this book is one of my updates on Goodreads while I was reading this book. If you follow me on Goodreads, you know. If you don't, you're missing out. I was like 70-something% of the way through, I think, and I was like, this book literally gives me the chills, and I'm sad already knowing that I'm going to be finishing this book soon. So you get really attached to the characters. I did, at least. You might cry. I did, but that's not surprising. Even for a really long book, I do think that James Islington earned his pages pretty well, and I don't think that this book was too long. It does take quite a while to get into the actual academy part of the book. So if you've heard of this book and know that it's like an elite academy, I think you might be a little bit disappointed because, like I said, it doesn't get to the academy part until probably, I can't remember, 40% of the way through. Just highly recommend though. It's so good. The next book I don't have physically because I read it via audiobook. The Love Wager by Lynn Painter, and I rated this 3.5 stars. This was definitely my least favorite Lynn Painter book. I really love her young adult romances, and this was my first adult romance by her, and in general I like YA romances better than adult, and 3.5 stars in general is not a bad rating. I would still recommend it for certain people, certain situations. This is about these 2 characters. Is it Hallie? Jack, I think that's their names, and they are both trying to find love. They both are kind of recently out of relationships, and they actually originally meet at Jack's sister's wedding, and she's the bartender, and they meet and they actually have like a one-night stand. But then fast forward, I don't know why I'm forgetting details about this book. Do they just keep in touch, or do they then come across each other again? I don't remember, but basically fast forward, they're friends, and they kind of make this wager, this love wager on who can basically fall in love first. So they kind of both correlate dates individually, but with each other kind of in the sense of they're both going to the same restaurant and at the same time, and their kind of deal is that if they're not having a good time on their dates, that they will ditch and go get tacos at this other place. And so they just get to know each other really well, but they are strictly just friends for whatever reason. I can't even remember why. They just won't get together. And you know where it goes from there. Don't really have a ton of thoughts on it or things to discuss. But yeah, it was cute enough, but wasn't anything to write home about. Then the next book I read, the third book in the Heartless trilogy by Lauren Roberts, and it's also a pretty thick one. I don't know why this cracks me up so much. And if you guys can even see, but I literally have one tab in this book. Just one. It is, by the way, if you're curious and want to check your book to see what I'm talking about, it's page 193. Oh, just reading it again is so sweet. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. I rated this book 4.75 stars. It was so close to a 5-star. I am one of those annoying people that rates a lot of books quarter stars. Sorry, not sorry. This is a fantasy romance series. I feel like I've explained this premise so many times on this channel that I feel like I'm being so repetitive. But we have these ordinaries that don't have any powers, and we have elites that do have powers in this society. Our main character, Peyton, is an ordinary but is pretending to be an elite, and because of her kind of pretending to be an elite, she gets kind of roped in to compete in the purging trials, which is a competition between a bunch of elites. And another person that is competing in these trials is one of the princes, Kai, who obviously is an elite. As I just said, she's the only ordinary. And they are enemies because the elites in this society hate ordinaries and they are cast out and killed. That's kind of the premise. We have that enemies lovers romance aspect. We have the trials, and of course this is the third book, so a lot has happened since that first book and the trials, but we are just continuing on with Peyton and Kai, and can't really get too much or at all into what this book is about because spoilers. But yeah, I really liked it. I think Lauren Roberts, she's a very young author. This is her debut series. At the time that she wrote Powerless, the first book, she was 18. In this one, I think she was 21 when she wrote this one, and I think already I can tell that her writing has improved since Powerless, and I'm just really excited to see what she continues to write about and do with her career. Absolutely love this series. It's probably like a 4.5-star series for me because I didn't rate any of the books 5 stars, but I just really liked it. I did tear up as well. And then the next book I read was Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and let me actually go get my laptop because I at this book started doing this new rating system, and since then that is how I have been deciding my rating for a book. And I also have been trying to write a Goodreads review for every single book that I have read, even if it's just like one little paragraph. So I want to read them to you guys because I think sometimes blabbing about all of these books right now in this moment, I'm like, I don't remember what I thought about this book really or this book. So I think reading those reviews will just kind of help me remember what I liked and didn't like about a book. Okay, so Heartless by Marissa Meyer, I rated 3.25 stars, and this is a fantasy with some romance. It's basically kind of a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland, but about the Queen of Hearts and kind of her origin story in Marissa Meyer's eyes, as she thought it would go, you know? And I absolutely love that. So you're following Catherine, and all she wants to do is be a baker, but she is kind of a part of a family that is higher up in society, and pretty much the, you know, daughter's job in that type of family is to just marry someone powerful, you know, and rich, and just to be a wife, not to be a baker. And what makes it even harder is that none other than the king wants to marry her. So she's dealing with that. There is this joker called Jest that shows up in the kingdom. They start spending more time together. And yeah, you're just following her as she kind of turns into the Queen of Hearts, which is very interesting. I loved Marissa Meyer's interpretation of what she thinks would have happened, and it was pretty justified in my opinion what Kath kind of ends up doing and why she turns into this heartless Queen of Hearts because not great things happen. Her mother is horrible. All she cares about is Catherine becoming queen. She doesn't care about what she actually wants. Speaking of my rating breakdown, I rate on 5 things: character, setting, plot, emotional impact, and personal enjoyment. And I rated those all 4s, except for I rated the setting 5. What I wrote was, I loved the setting, definitely the standout for me in this book. The quirky and wacky characters' names and just general nonsense that is this place was very fun and made for an enjoyable read. I thought she did a fantastic job at making me like Catherine while also feeling like her character arc was justified. I felt every emotion along with her and can understand why she decided to do what she did. The emotional impact wasn't quite as high as I thought it would be, but I definitely still felt sad and angry for Catherine throughout the story. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Next up, we have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is the first book in a young adult fantasy trilogy with a tiny subplot of romance. We are following Jude, who is like, I already forgot, 16, 17, and she and her sisters have been living for about 10 years in this land of fairy, and they're like the only humans. And this is because their dad, I say that in quotes because one of her sisters is actually her half-sister and is a fairy, therefore her dad isn't Jude's dad, but he basically ends up taking the 3 girls there kind of against their will. He takes them there because Jude's parents were murdered when she was 7, and she honestly really has kind of grown to like living in the high court of fairy, but the fairies, on the other hand, don't want her there. They despise humans, especially Prince Carden, which is the youngest son of the High King, and basically you're just following Jude kind of realize that she is tired of being mistreated by these fairies and decides to do something about it. I really liked it. I definitely think I liked the kind of second half better. I wasn't exactly sure how I was feeling during the beginning, but I ended up enjoying it, and I'm definitely going to be continuing the series. So my rating for this book was 4 stars overall. I rated characters 4, setting 5, plot 4, emotional impact 3, and personal enjoyment 4. And I wrote, for a fairly short first book in a trilogy, I thought this book delivered. It was a little slow moving at first, and I wasn't sure I would love it, but then the plot picked up, and I love where Holly Black decided to take it, as I think it will make for an interesting plot for the remaining books. What we got of the subplot of romance, I was already eating up. Can't wait for that to grow a little bit. Again, don't go into this series, from what I've heard and so far read, thinking that it is a romance. It's not very romance heavy at all. Next, I listened to a book on audio that I actually own though, and that is The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis, which is the 3rd book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. I'm very slowly making my way through this series. This is one, if you've seen all of the movies that have been made, this is one of the books in the series that was not made into movies, so that's always interesting because you're going in blind kind of. At least I do. I don't know, I haven't been looking at what these books are about individually before going into the series. Of course, they all take place in Narnia, and I really like this one actually. I don't know why I say actually, but I rated this 4 stars, and this one was so sweet. You have these 2 kids who kind of join together a little bit into the story, and they each have a talking horse that they're riding and kind of with, and they all join together to kind of help save Narnia because they find out along their journey that this neighboring nation is trying to invade them. It was a little slower in terms of plot, which I guess brings me to my review because I remember writing this in there. I wrote, this book was a delight. I have been really enjoying listening to this series for the first time, and it's interesting reading the books that were not made into movies. I can see why this one wasn't, as it's a little slower in terms of action, especially compared to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but it was nonetheless very cute and fun. I rated the characters 4, setting 5, Narnia, love Narnia, plot 3, emotional impact 3, personal enjoyment 4. Next, I listened to another audiobook, which was also another really short one, but this one was All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. And I feel like I don't really know how to explain this book in an interesting way, so I'm just going to read you the summary. It's pretty short. In a corporate-dominated spacefaring future, planetary missions must be approved and supplied by the company. For their own safety, exploratory teams are accompanied by company-supplied security androids. But in a society where contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, safety isn't a primary concern. On a distant planet, a team of scientists is conducting surface tests, shadowed by their company-supplied droid, a self-aware sec unit that has hacked its own governor module and refers to itself, though never out loud, as Murderbot. Scornful of humans, Murderbot wants... There's literally a typo in this, I think. All Murderbot wants, there's no all in there, but anyway, is to be left alone long enough to figure out who it is. But when a neighboring mission goes dark, it's up to the scientists and Murderbot to get to the truth. It's a really long series, but I think most of the books are really short. This one is 144 pages and like a 2.5 hour long audiobook or something like that. So this took me no time at all to listen to. And I rated this one 3.5 stars. It didn't really stick with me or stand out to me, but it has such high ratings that I kind of felt like I was missing something. Maybe I wasn't in the mood for it. I don't know. But my rating breakdown was the characters 4 stars. I really liked Murderbot. Setting 4 stars. I think the sci-fi aspect, they're on a different planet, is very interesting. Plot 3, emotional impact 3, and personal enjoyment 3. It's so short that it's hard to have a lot of plot going on, and I wasn't super invested emotionally, and those things all kind of go toward your personal enjoyment. So wasn't my favorite, but not bad. I am going to be continuing the series, I'm pretty sure, unless something happens, and I'm also going to be starting the show in June, so excited to watch that. Then I read Lady Sunshine by Amy Mason Doan. This book is, I would say, mostly a fiction. It does have some mystery in it, and it has a tiny bit of romance. I guess you would also maybe call it historical fiction, because we have a dual timeline between 1979 and 1999. We are following, I don't remember her name, Jackie, our main character, and in 1979 she is 17 years old-ish, and she goes to stay with her uncle, aunt, and cousin who she's never met on this sprawling estate, it says, which is a good way to describe it, on the California coast. At this estate they have a bunch of little like cabins, and a bunch of their friends come to stay with her cousin's family. Her uncle is a pretty famous musician, singer, and her cousin Willa absolutely get very close. They form a fast friendship until the summer abruptly ends in tragedy. And then in the 1999 timeline, of course, she is now 20 years older, in her late 30s, and she is going back to the sandcastle, the estate is called, because she has unexpectedly inherited it and she needs to get it ready to sell it. And being back there, she just kind of starts to unravel information and things that happened 20 years ago about the tragedy, and Willa has actually disappeared since 1979 and no one knows where she went, and she's kind of just finally trying to figure it all out. So that's like the mystery aspect, and I didn't really have any expectations going into this book because I hadn't heard anyone talk about it, but I had heard that it was similar to Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau, and I love that book, so I picked up this one, and it was similar. I rated this one 4 stars, and it was just 4s down the line. I wrote that the subplot of mystery kept me intrigued as I wanted to find out what happened at the end of the summer of 1979 and what happened to Willa, and the reveals did not disappoint. I loved the friendship between Willa and Jackie. They are two very different people, and I think they both admired one another for that reason. So I recommend if this sounds interesting or if you loved Mary Jane. Next I read The Rose Wagon by Sasha Payton Smith, which is the first book in what's going to be a duology, I'm pretty sure. And just straight off the bat, I rated this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I did read this in a 24-hour readathon. This one I flew through. 1, because I was reading it in a 24-hour readathon, and 2, just because it was very bingeable and easy to read and fast-paced. And this is a young adult fantasy romance. That is like my favorite genre. Young adult fantasy and romance. Sign me up. This takes place in, let me remind myself, I wrote it in my review, in a reimagined reimagined London high society in 1848. And I absolutely loved that aspect, by the way. I love like high society where they have to dress nice, they have to be like chaperoned with a boy and they can't be left alone, and they have to like court each other, all of that. Love it. And I just feel like, once again, sometimes the summaries like on the book explain things way better and faster than I can, so I'll just read it to you guys. Every citizen of England is granted one bargain from their immortal Fae Queen. High society girls are expected to bargain for qualities that will win them suitors: a rare talent for piano in exchange for one's happiest childhood memory, a perfect smile for one's ability to taste. But Ivy Benton's debut season arrives with a shocking twist: a competition to secure the heart of the Queen's Fae son, Prince Bram, a prize that could save Ivy's family from ruin and free her sister from the bargain that destroyed her. Yet every glittering Fae deal has a rotting heart, and at the center of this contest is a dark plot that could destroy everything Ivy knows. This book has a lot of pining, forbidden love, and I absolutely ate it up. And I wrote that this book was so bingeable. It gives us that kind of courtly drama being in the high society, which I loved. I loved the forbidden love. I was swooning, the yearning. I loved Ivy, our female main character. She is smart, kind, brave, unabashed, and very family oriented. The magic system / fairy bargains I found very interesting, and that in general it just gave me all of the magical, enchanting, ethereal vibes that I love. And I will definitely be reading the second book when it comes out. Then I read Legend by Marie Lu, which is again the first book in a series. I know, I started a lot of new series in the last 2 months. That is the opposite of what I want to be doing, but you know what, it's fine, it's fine. This book is a young adult dystopian where we kind of have two warring nations of America, and we are following two main characters. It's a dual POV between June and Day. They are both 15-year-olds. June is a soldier and Day is a famous criminal. They kind of are on opposite sides, and this isn't a spoiler, it says it in the summary. When June's brother is murdered, Day becomes one of the prime suspects, so she kind of takes it upon herself as a soldier to find him and get justice. There is also a subplot of romance in this, which was really sweet. They are really young, so it is pretty YA. Like, I feel like a lot of the YA books that I usually read are more so for the older ages in the YA category, like 17, 18, but this one, being that the main characters are 15, it's a little bit younger, but I still really enjoyed this one more than I thought. I gave it a 4.5 star rating, and once again I will definitely be continuing the series. So at least with the series that I've been starting lately, they're almost all ones that I'm like really excited about continuing. But my rating breakdown for this one was 4 stars for characters, 4 for setting, plot was 5, emotional impact 4, and personal enjoyment 5. And I wrote that this was an extremely well-paced, action-packed, fun, young adult dystopian novel. Our two main characters are on opposing sides. They both have valid reasons for why they are doing what they're doing and are on the side that they're on, and you end up empathizing with both of them. Their worlds collide and they end up realizing that their true enemy is not each other but something else entirely. June and Day are extremely smart and talented, and they are both very likable characters. Their subtle budding romance was very sweet, and I loved how open and honest Day is as a character. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind or do what his heart tells him to do. But yeah, very well-paced, action-packed. It is pretty short. It's like exactly 300 pages. So you'd think that's kind of a given, but it didn't seem too fast at the same time, which is nice. Really enjoyed this one. Next, you guys, I read a very exciting book, and that is The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the second part of The Lord of the Rings. All I'm going to say about this book is that it is an epic fantasy. We have this magic ring that was made by this evil being, and we have hobbits who are basically little people who love food and have hairy feet. And those are their main characteristics. No. And then we have all sorts of creatures in this story. Orcs, goblins, wizards, dwarves. I could go on. And our main character is Frodo. He is a hobbit, and he is tasked to bring this magic evil ring to the fires of Mount Doom where it was forged to destroy it, but that is not going to be easy because it is very powerful, and all of the bad guys in this story want it back for their master Sauron. I just love this story and these characters. in this author. 5 stars easy. Next, I read a bunch of romance books for a video, and the first one being Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, which I have not yet written reviews for the rest of these books on my Goodreads, by the way. But Love Theoretically, I rated 4 stars. I think I really like Ali Hazelwood's writing. She writes a lot of STEMinist romances. So basically, books about the main character being in the STEM career. This one had a really fun premise. Our main character, Elsie, wow, I'm surprised I remembered that, is very broke, and she does not like her job. She is trying to kind of break out into the science career more, being a theoretical scientist. To make ends meet, she has to work as a fake girlfriend on this app. One of her clients that she likes spending time with just as a friend, but so she has actually been his fake girlfriend multiple times. So she's kind of gotten to know his family a little bit, and his older brother, why do I want to say his name is Jack? She doesn't really like him because it seems like he doesn't like her. And then fast forward a little bit, she's in the running for this position to be a theoretical scientist at MIT, and who other than Jack is one of the people that are on this, I guess, committee, you can call it, to decide whether she's gonna get hired or this other person's gonna get hired. But the funny part of the story is that he's very confused because a part of her whole facade as being a fake girlfriend, she usually makes up things about herself, like her job. So she tells this family that she's like a librarian. So when she shows up trying to get this job as this scientist, he's very confused. So then he doesn't really like her very much, but it's all misunderstanding, but they start spending more time together. And of course, romance ensues. So it was a really cute premise. I think it was a little bit too much, like, what's that word? Monotony? Yeah, with her just in the process of getting this job. And in the plot, I think, was my maybe least favorite part about this book. But I think Ali Hazelwood's writing and just my enjoyment in general reading this was what made it to be a 4 star. Next, we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and I rated Yours Truly 3 stars. Abby Jimenez so far is 2 for 2 on 3-star books for me. I did not love them. I don't think she is the author for me. I don't know. I think it's her characters, and not even sometimes the main characters, but just even the side characters that I don't think we're supposed to dislike, that I end up disliking. And in this case, it was kind of, and in her other book too, the main character, the female main character specifically, that I didn't love. I feel like some of the things she puts in her books are very unrealistic. Like the main male character in this book was just too perfect to seem real. Like, I know these are obviously fictional characters, but I still like my characters to feel real to me, and he just didn't because of that. There is this fake dating aspect in this book that was also really unrealistic. And I guess I should tell you guys kind of the summary. We have Brianna, who is a ER doctor, and we have Jacob, who is also an ER doctor. And Brianna her life just kind of sucks right now. She's going through a divorce. Her brother Benny needs a liver transplant, and when she thinks it might be kind of starting to go in the right direction because she is up for this promotion, who other than Jacob comes and starts working at her hospital, and therefore he is kind of her only obstacle in getting this promotion. So because of that and a couple other reasons, she immediately decides that she does not like him one bit because of that, and because Jacob doesn't want to get off on the wrong foot with her, and because he has really bad anxiety, he decides to write her a letter to kind of explain that he has anxiety and that sometimes that doesn't help him in like social situations, and sometimes he can have like a really bad first impression on people. And once again, romance ensues. What a surprise. Yeah, that's all I really gotta say about that one. 3 stars. Then I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I thought this one was really cute and honestly emotional in some parts. I rated this a 4.25 stars, and I did cry. I wasn't expecting that, and that definitely did kind of bump up my rating. I feel like when I cry in a book, if it's just like tearing up a tiny bit, then it doesn't affect my like rating on the book very much. But I do feel like when I cry, that means that I probably really liked it because I was more emotionally connected to it. So I think that helped in this situation. But we are following 2 writers, January and Gus, and they are both in creative slumps. They have writer's block, and they happen to be staying in neighboring beach houses. They decide to strike up a deal where they'll basically switch genres. Gus usually writes literary fiction, and January usually writes romance. To help them out in that, though, they have to kind of go on field trips with each other. I will say that I don't think that this book is super beachy, so if you are like, man, I really want to read a nice beachy book for when I go on vacation, and you think this might be a good book to bring for that specific situation that you want a beachy book for, I would say that this one is probably not the book. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, I liked pretty much every aspect of the book, but I think the emotional aspect was definitely the star of the show for me. The next one I finished was The Favorites by Lane Fargo, which I listened to on audio, and this book I feel like is getting a lot of hype right now, and it is, I would say at its core, a fiction, but it also has romance in it, and it is about these two figure skaters, or ice dancers. Sorry, my bad. Still not really sure what the difference is on that, but it never ever calls them figure skaters. It always calls them ice dancers. Basically, that is where you are teamed up with someone. You have a guy and a girl. So it's kind of like figure skating pairs, but I still think even then it's a little bit different. Anyways, you guys probably don't care. We have Katarina and Heath, and they have basically been inseparable from a young age. They're in love, and they are ice dancing partners. You're basically just following them throughout their careers over the course of probably 10 or more years. They're some of the best ice dancers. You're following them trying to go to the Olympics, and it's kind of like a toxic situation. They're not really good for each other, but they're just so in love that they don't really care. They both hurt each other, but then forgive each other. And I honestly really liked it, but I did think that I would like it more. It kind of gives me the vibes of like a Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And the author even says in her acknowledgments in this book that she thanks Taylor Jenkins Reid for kind of inspiring her to write this book. So if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I do, I think that you should give this a read. Really enjoyed that one. And very lastly, The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. As you heard me talk about earlier, I am reading the Chronicles of Narnia books right now, and this book is actually inspired by C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. We're following this girl, Emily, who, well, she's like a young woman. She's like in her early 20s, and she is basically looking for her sister, who has been missing for years and years, and she thinks she knows just the person to go to try and help her find her, Jeremy. And the reason for that is because 15 years prior, Jeremy and his best friend Rafe went missing themselves in this forest, and they 6 months later came out of the forest and kind of couldn't remember anything or just didn't want to say what happened. And for one reason or another, Jeremy has never told Rafe what happened, but he does remember, but Rafe does not remember anything. Jeremy kind of has this gift ever since that he can find missing people. So that is why Emily goes to him to try to find her sister, but Jeremy can't find her alone. He needs Rafe's help, and he thinks he knows where she might be. In this magical land, it's a standalone. It's pretty short, just over 300 pages, and I do think that it was a little bit underdeveloped. I rated this one 4 stars also, by the way, and it probably even would have been a little bit lower if it didn't have an emotional impact on me like it did. I don't even really know why it did, but I cried at the end of this book, and I was not expecting to. I mean, it's a very sad situation. Kind of Rafe's background with his family dynamic is sad. But yeah, basically going back to what I was saying about when I cry in a book, it usually raises my rating. That is also what happened in this book, and again, I really liked the setting because it's similar to Narnia. We have magic, magical creatures. This also has a romance in it that is absolutely beautiful. The plot, kind of when I was saying it was a little bit underdeveloped, that's kind of what I mean. I think the plot could have been a little bit stronger, but overall, I'm glad I finally read it. I was so excited when I heard she was coming out with another book, and it sounded really interesting. It was like one of my more anticipated reads of 2024. summer, and then I just never picked it up. And finally last time when I was at the library picking up other books that I had on hold, I was browsing and I found it, and I was like, I actually think I'm just gonna grab this one and see if I read it this month. And it was on my May TBR, and I did get to it at the very end, as this was my last book I read in the month of May. That is all the 16 books that I read in April and May. I like doing this every other month, but it also makes this video really long. So let me know what you guys like. Should I do this every month? Should I keep up with the every other month wrap-ups, or what you guys think I should do, because I am open. If you've made it this far, comment what your favorite read of May was. Honestly, I didn't have the best reading month in specifically May, but I did have The Two Towers, so that was definitely my favorite book that I read in May. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!